the opening address from Mina for this conference, and it looks to me that the majority of you are Mina people. Some people aren't, but it looks like most of you are. So what I'd like to talk about really, I think, are some of the things that are affecting our youth in this country and really everywhere else, because now we're dealing with a global phenomenon, which is the monoculture of consumption, consumerism, and particularly Western culture, which is taking over the world in incredibly rapid ways. I was just, for instance, in Spain, and we spent a month there, and the effect of Americanization, globalization, everywhere you saw billboards with Western actors who suddenly were transformed into Spanish-speaking people because their quotations were all in Spanish. A lot of them were for alcohol campaigns. They had a famous actor called Neem Leeson, I think, or something like that, and several others. And when you look around and see these famous faces on billboards that everybody seems to know who they are, and for some reason people seem to be interested in what type things that they drink, even though they probably don't drink those things, but they're paid massive amounts of money to at least pretend that they drink those things, because if they do, other people tend to follow them. Now, one of the interesting things about human beings sociologically is that human beings tend to imitate. In fact, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, rahimahullah, in a book called I'lam al-Muwaqqi'een, says that one of the proofs for taqleed, which is the idea of somebody imitating somebody else if they don't know themselves, is that the fitra, or the inherent nature of people, is to imitate. Human beings tend to imitate. And if you look at this culture, the people that are put up as models that people are now imitating are done through very sophisticated techniques that have been studied very seriously, and many of the people involved in these activities are actually, they have PhDs in psychology. Just to give you an example, in New York, and somebody sent this to me, it was a program that was shown on CBC. In New York, they had a child psychologist who was on this documentary about using advertisements and directing ads at children. And they actually direct ads now at children that are 2 years of age. In other words, they're actually television ads that are designed for children that are 2 years of age. And this, at a certain point, this interviewer asked this man, "Don't you find this unethical?" And at that point, it was as if this person actually didn't have that word in his vocabulary. Any word that either unethical or ethical, anything with ethical. And he looked at this person and he said, "Unethical, why? Why would it be unethical?" And she said, "Because you're manipulating people who really don't have the ability to discern, because of their age, that they're unaware that they're being manipulated." And he said, "Well, if we didn't do it, somebody else would." And this was his type of justification. Now, I think that actually that the question asked by this woman was, I think it was an ingenuous question for the simple reason that I think that it's not just children that don't realize they're being manipulated, it's actually everybody. It's the adult population as well, because there's a lot of people that think that they can watch these things and they don't think that they're being affected by it. They actually believe somehow that they're immune to it. Well, it's affecting all these other people, but I'm not affected by it, right? As he puts on his Ray-Ban glasses and ties his Nike shoes and gets into his Lexus car. I mean, all of those things, why does he have them? He didn't really choose them. They were actually implanted in his mind because he's buying on impulse. Most people, in fact, they call it impulse buying. They don't actually buy because they want something or they need something. They actually have been programmed to buy these things. Now, the average person in this country is seeing, according to studies that have been done on this, 3,000 commercials a day. This doesn't include television. This is talking billboards. A lot of this doesn't include like T-shirts. All these people going around with T-shirts. And I saw somebody today, a Muslim, he had this Calvin Klein thing. I said, is he paying you? Do you have a contract? He said, no. I said, well, you're getting robbed because you're giving him free advertising and you're not getting any money out of it. That's un-American. But that's the thing. They don't. Why is he wearing a T-shirt that says Calvin Klein on it, who's a pornographer basically, and then he's got a hat that says I love Islam? I mean, something's, it's one of those what's wrong with this picture type thing. And I don't think he's really thought about it. That's my guess. I don't think he's really thought about it. Because a lot of us haven't thought about these things. A lot of us have been asleep for a long time. A lot of these experiments were done when we were little kids. We were put in front of televisions. We didn't realize what was happening to us. It was actually a form of child abuse. Unfortunately, most of the parents didn't even realize, because the television in this culture is used, and I wrote an essay about this, it's used like the Pied Piper of Hamelin. I don't know if people know that story, but when I was a little boy, that was one of the stories that was read to me. And it was about a group of children. Well, the story is that a bunch of rats take over this town, and they're driving the town crazy. So this piper comes in, and if you know European and Western motifs, the piper is usually the devil. Pan, Puck, and there's a lot of, but the piper is usually the devil. So the Pied Piper comes into town, and he says, I'll get rid of your pests for you, but you have to pay me. This is ancient pest control. And so they agree on a price. Sure enough, he takes his flute out, and all these rats follow him out of town. And he dumps them over the ocean at a cliff, and he comes back and he wants his pay. Well, now people are greedy by nature, and so the mayor decides, well, they were probably left anyway, and we're not going to pay you. So he gets upset, and what he does is he plays his pipe, and all the children follow him out of the town. And he takes all these children, and they're hypnotized. You see, they can't, and he takes them into a mountain opens up, and he goes into the mountain, and everybody goes in except a lame child. One child doesn't make it, and all the children disappear, and they're gone, and then the town goes into mourning because they've lost their most precious thing, which is their children. And in a sense, that's what's happened. The television is like the Pied Piper. Children have this interesting dual nature. On the one hand, they're like pests. Right? They're like rodents. People don't like them in the house. They cause problems, they break things, they're smelly. They do a lot of things that really drive parents crazy, particularly men. Men are driven more crazy than women. In fact, some people claim that that women are much more in touch with their children than men are. A lot of people say that men just think that there's a bunch of little people living in the house or something. But anyway, they have this pesky side to them. So what do people do now? They call in the Pied Piper. And they put this child in front of the Pied Piper. And he takes away that pesky element of the child. Because suddenly the child's no longer screaming. It's no longer clamoring for something to do. It's no longer begging the mother to do this or that. It's literally completely pacified in front of a cathode ray tube, which has in the back of it something that they literally call, the engineers who designed it, a cathode ray gun.